Hey all, it's Jeremy from jeremy.net. I am a comic book creator, writer, illustrator, self-publisher, and if you'd like to support this channel and get exclusive content, I post a bonus video once a month, plus advance access to my blog posts at patreon.com/Jeremy. You can also, if you'd like to check out some of my comics for free, you can get previews of every issue of my current series at comics.jeremy.net. And if you would like to buy some of my comics, you can get them at amazon.jeremy.net. All right, so let's get started. If you guys have any comments, feel free to leave them in the chat. As for me, let's see, what do we have here? So, my comic Morningstar, which is the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven told as a Western, I am working on issue 7. I've been working on it for several months now, and now I'm just finishing up doing the gray tones. I published the book black and white. And once that's all done, I will start working on the cover and get it off to the printer. So this page right here is near the end of the issue, and Lucifer has captured one of the archangels, Raphael, and has a noose around his neck. Lucifer's pretty pissed because there's these creatures that he created, demons basically. And Raphael has found a way to transform them into seraphim, sort of like monstrous, powerful, but they're like angels, but more beast-like, the way I draw them, almost like a sphinx or a griffin. And Lucifer's not happy about it, because Raphael is tinkering with his process, with his plans for overthrowing heaven and taking it on all his own. So he's got him lynched. And let me know if you're having any audio problems or difficulty hearing me or any such things, because I'm still working through some bugs. In fact, one of the things I'd intended to do and just didn't have time this weekend was sit down and figure out how to set up my live streams such that I can have the scheduled post, so I can send out a link way in advance for anyone who wants to tune in, but still be able to broadcast from my screen, because it looks like the only way to do that is from using Google Hangouts. And so far I have found that when I use Google Hangouts, it just the different way of live streaming, not using OBS or I guess however it is the video is encoded, it doesn't give me the crisp, cleaner sort of stream like you can see here, where you get a better look at the video. You get a better look at the artwork and it comes out crisp. It's a little bit more pixelated when I'm going through Google Hangouts. And I don't want the art pixelated. I want you guys to be able to see it as clearly as possible. My process for gray toning is somewhat remedial in the sense that I've explained this in previous videos, that I don't really do proper comic book flats. I just sort of block in and paint it almost like I'm just blocking in just enough to see the individual panels. They're kind of separated that way. And I just grab a panel and then just go in and basically marker it up. I am pleasantly surprised with how much progress I've made with this issue, because I honestly was afraid it was going to take the entire month. And, you know, it depends on how long it takes me to finish the cover. But I'm already up to, it's a 28-page issue, and I think I'm already on... how many pages do I have up in here? Let's see. Oh, I've got 23, 25, and 28. There's a couple of things in pages 26 and 27 that might not necessarily be appropriate for YouTube or for live streaming. So I think I'm going to do those off screen. But other than that, yeah, I'm pretty close to wrapping up the gray tones for this issue, and I'll be able to jump right into the cover. The main trap I need to worry about is not getting so wrapped up with having extra time that I just lose myself in the cover and take forever with it. I kind of want to do something that is the same level of quality of the digital painting for the revised trade of Volume 1. But I want to see if I can, because that piece I probably spent weeks doing the thumbnails, then several weeks doing color studies painted, and then I probably spent another 2 weeks just painting that single image, and I painted it probably, yeah, actually no, I think I may have started over twice, and one of them I got pretty far along, and then had to really take a hard look at, because I worked out doing the values first. And hopefully the things that I learned from doing that first one will allow me to finish the second cover in a week or less. So that is what I'm hoping. And you know, that's what should happen. You get more ambitious the more you work on a project, you learn more. And well, I definitely feel like I have a lot of growth to do in terms of skill. With each page, I learn a little bit more, and it allows me to do the following pages faster and better. I've been going through a period for quite a while now where I've been going slower in order to really work through my process and try to make each page as good as I'm capable of. And now I feel like I don't want to say plateau, because plateau sounds negative. And what it is I have figured out how to get the books, each page, to a consistent level of quality that I'm at least satisfied with. Is it perfect? No. My work's far from perfect. I still have a lot of growth and learning to do. But I'm satisfied with the quality that's coming out for each page. And now that I can get that quality consistently, it makes me... Then I start looking at, well, how can I repeat this process but faster? So now I'm starting to optimize my process a little bit more. In terms of both the gray tones, in terms of the actual inking, the drawing. I'm due to do a video sharing some of my my figure drawing classwork, because I realized as I took a bunch of drawings off of my board the other day, I've got like a huge stack of drawings from the end of January and through most of February. But I really wanted to focus on working on Morningstar and wrapping this issue up. So I just kind of figure, once I get this done, either next week's video, I'll either be working on the cover, or if I'm done with the cover, then it will just be a long-ass video of me showing you what I've been doing figure drawing-wise over the past few months. And then I will be diving into the thumbnails for the final issue. And it'll be interesting to see how that goes, because since I've been doing the live streaming, I've mostly been... It's been inking, which I can ink and talk at the same time. Gray toning, I can... Obviously, I'm doing this. I'm gray toning and talking at the same time. But the big challenge for me, I don't know how it's going to go if I'm trying to do thumbnailing and talking at the same time. Reason being is because thumbnailing is the most meditative state. It's the most meditative level of the process. If there was one point at which I would really not be talking and just really go into my head and just be thinking and not really talking, that would be the phase. And I'm not sure how that's going to go. So, I mean, who knows? I may try it and decide, oh, wait, I'm not going to live stream my my thumbnail process because I really need to think so much and be so far into my head that it's not worth having you guys watch me while doing it. So we'll see. I mean, I feel like I shouldn't even say that because it's like I'm giving myself permission and letting myself off the hook before I've even tried it. I do know that, well, actually, you know what I was going to say? I was about to say I do know it's going to be difficult, but even that's me putting barriers on the process before I've even gotten there. And I shouldn't do that. I should give myself the chance to just try it and see what happens. Maybe I can sit there and thumbnail and work out details in the page without even breaking a sweat. I am changing the way I'm working a little bit differently. Well, actually, you know what? Why not go back to what I was doing before? You guys can actually tell me what you prefer. Because what I can do is I can work on one page at a time and kind of go in here and work out. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I start with just doing my simple base of like a 20% gray, and then just the gray and the white, kind of like separate the darks from the lights, and then I add in my darker values and lighter values where necessary. But one of the other things that I have done is I will work with 3 pages up. Let me see here. Let's move this around. All right. You guys tell me whether you enjoy watching me working with one image more close up, or the way that I have been working, where I will have 3 pages on the screen at once, simply so that, hang on, turn it on, lock it, turn it off. And the purpose of having 3 pages up at one time is simply so that I don't get too caught up in detail. Okay, this last page here. All right, so flat selected, flat selected. So for me, I do find it useful to go through and have, make sure I've got white as my foreground color. I find it easier to have multiple pages up at once. So I don't get lost in the detail. And just do this simple block in. But I also don't know whether, like, let's say you're watching this on your phone, it'll look super tiny, you can't really see anything if you're watching it on a phone or a mobile device. In which case, I can switch to just working on one page and work a little bit more close up so you can actually see things a little bit better. Now, you guys let me know what you prefer. the other thing I've noticed, I think the other reason why I've gone back and forth between working on having 3 pages up on the screen at once versus just having 1 page going, panel by panel, is that when I'm working on my laptop, obviously I'm working with a smaller screen, whereas I'm working from my desktop right now. And I do find that I would rather be able to see what I'm doing a little bit more clearly with larger images when I'm working smaller on the laptop. So, I constantly am tweaking the process and the approach. And I spend a lot of time thinking about this kind of stuff, like what my methodology is, do I have a process for how I work, how I move from one page to another, one panel to another. And my wife jokes about the fact, she says that she loves my OCD-ness. And I do tend to be sometimes a little overly detail-oriented. But it's because I feel like if I can find little small ways to optimize this process, then I can go from it taking me, let's say, a year to do 1.5 issues to someday being able to do, well, there was a point where I was doing 2 issues a year when I had kind of a shorter commute and a little bit more spare time. My original goal has always been, pardon me, gotta take a sip of water here. Okay. So, my original goal was to be able to publish quarterly, which is an aggressive schedule for somebody working a day job. But, why not aim for something? A buddy of mine always used to quote, I don't know who originally said it, but if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough, or your goals aren't high enough. Just undo that. Started painting some rocks white. When I go back into this panel, there's going to be a lot more that's going to be darker values in the foreground, and then it's going to be kind of blown out, almost like there's a halo of light around Lucifer. One of the things that really freed up my mind, and again, something I mentioned last week, but one of the things that allowed me to start drawing much faster, gray toning faster, was to stop thinking about local color, or in this case, since it's black and white, local value. Is something dark, a dark jacket versus a light jacket, and really start gray toning purely around the concept of separating forms or separating planes, separating a foreground from a background, separating one group of characters from another, and just letting go of the idea that I was trying to paint it like as if you're doing a black and white photo where you're trying to get a full range of values that are realistically depicted, and really just cartooning it and just saying, all right, what do I need to call attention to? What do I need to subdue and make drop out, fall away into the background? That really simplified the process for me. And it's interesting when I've got these things that I consciously know. I shouldn't need someone to tell me that. And yet, I think when you do art long enough, it's just not even about how long you do art. I think that it is an ebb and a flow, because you go through a point where you feel like you know what you're doing, and then you go through a point where you feel like you've crawled way up your own ass and you need to check yourself and question every decision. Having other friends who are artists who can put you in check that you're not going to get mad about, or even if you do get mad, you're going to listen, that helps. And it helps both on the positive and on the negative. Sometimes you're beating yourself up way too much, and someone else will come and say, "Hey, man, it's fine. It's cool. Just keep going. Don't sweat it." And I think that we need both. You need someone saying, "Hey, you're way off base here, and these things are things you should seriously consider changing," as well as giving the nurturing pat on the back and just say, "Hey, just keep on stepping." I know myself well enough that I am certain there is a point where this process of dealing only with value as a tool to separate objects and environmental planes is something that I will question. And I know that I will come back at some point and I will come back to try and doing a more photographic rendering, full value rendering. And it might just be that I will reach an equilibrium and just do pieces. I think what's more likely is that I will say, all right, if I'm doing a standalone piece that isn't necessarily a sequential piece of comic art, then maybe that's the approach that I'll take. But knowing myself, I always tend to look at whatever I'm doing and say, oh wait, what if I try it this way? It's my nature. I feel like I grow by questioning myself. By trying certain things, getting a process that seems to work, and then saying, all right, this is working really well for me. How can I smash this? That was meant to be somewhat snarky. Self-snark. I don't want to get too wrapped up in all of the details. This is, again, anytime I zoom in, it's the same thing with people I've noticed who draw digital, and they have told me, don't zoom in too much because you'll start rendering a bunch of details that no one is going to see or notice. And true, people are going to see and notice the level of detail I'm putting in here right now, but I can already see that I'm starting to really draw and get lost in detail and value as opposed to just moving through moving from panel to panel. And in fact, at this point, I'm ready to move to another page. You know what? Maybe it's just my insecurities, but I noticed that the chat is a little quiet today. Let me know if, are you guys able to hear me? Are you guys in there? I just want to make sure that the chat is working. There's not something technically wrong. Otherwise, I will just continue with my quiet rambles and thoughts as I draw. Just checking in with you guys. I'm so lonely. There's no one here on the chat. I think I heard my wife in the other room saying, asking if I was talking to her. Yes, now she's mocking me. It's one of the things I love about her. Gotta have people in your life you can laugh with. All right. Hang on, I'm pausing. Working for a second. Now, as I said, I skipped a couple of pages. I skipped having a couple of pages open, mainly because of some of the stuff that's happening in the in-between pages. So what you're actually looking at here is the last page of issue 7. So at this point, Lucifer pretty much has a menagerie of angels and demons that have joined forces with him. And I can tell you, this is a page. I'm actually really questioning whether I'm going to keep, like how much I'm going to work on this page versus the other pages. Because this is one that, that's another thing. There were so many group shots in this issue. That's another reason why this issue took much longer than previous ones. But there is... This page, I think, is harder for me to work out because I have the balance of having the overall composition and lighting decided by this large panel, and then there's all of these smaller inset panels around it. And it just, when I'm working on a piece that's particularly complicated, whether it's a comic panel or an entire page or a single standalone piece of art, I know that it's real easy for me to want to just get in there and work these details. This is a complicated page, and for me, honestly, the real challenge is simplifying this page. There's a lot going on, tons of creatures, and it's like a puzzle for me. In a way, the original drawing is a little bit of a roadmap, but let me turn off my little strips of gray tones. It's a roadmap, but it's a roadmap through a very winding backwoods-ish kind of landscape. I know for a fact that I am likely, I don't know why I said I know for a fact, because I just immediately undercut it with the fact that I may change by adding the likely, but I believe it's likely that I'm going to go in and start with simply defining the sky behind behind all of these angels and demons, and then draw some mountains and trees kind of in the lower area around them. The overall scheme I was planning for this page is just, it makes sense to have it framed with mostly dark values. So it's going to basically have it sort of like the angels and demons are sort of rising out of the darkness of this forest. I kind of feel right around this area, like right around here where this big guy towards the bottom is. It's about the area where I'm going to have the forest kind of coming up and out. So maybe go in there with a lighter gray. In this area already, it's time for me, I think, to switch now. I'll just leave that where it is, and I'll go and I'll pick the colors from over here. I keep saying color, even though I know I'm working in value. I feel like I'm only qualifying that for like somebody who either hasn't watched my videos before, or they're just sort of, or just randomly coming in and jumping in the middle, and it's just like, it's not a color, it's just black and white. I'm like, yeah. I'm just using the terminology for sake of ease. See, I'm already going into detail that I normally wouldn't do. I would normally just separate the sky from the mass of the creatures and the forest below. But the fact that I'm going in here with an additional value now to try and separate the foresty areas from the demony areas. Now starting to paint back up into the sky. And knowing that this is a splash page, I'm trying to also remember not to put too much detail towards the edge, because basically the demon that I'm painting around right now, he's probably going to get split in half. So anything that's further to the right of the page than him isn't even really going to show up. So there's no reason for me to get too fussy about those kind of details. And I'm not being really detailed or specific here. I may come in with a refined brush and go in closer and try to make these look more like leaves. But this is the point of working zoomed out, is to just rough in these ideas so I get a sense of what is and isn't working at this stage. And then say, all right, as an overall picture, where do I need more light values and where do I need more dark values? And I haven't even touched the inset shots, because I feel the goal is to get the overall panel working, the overall page working. If the overall values feel like, okay, this looks like a solid standalone image, then to go into the inset shots and tone them in such a way that they stand out in contrast to the surrounding image. This first got his giant menagerie. Alright, I think that that's about enough on this page, lest I get lost. And the fact that I took so long before I hit save drives me nuts because normally I'm hitting save like every 5 minutes or so, just as a reflex, as an instinct. Yeah, this page still feels a little bit too muddy and chaotic. It's going to take some massaging to get everything to feel a little more cohesive. But let me swing back over here. All right, at this point, I feel comfortable going in and actually adding more of the at this point, it's just the maximum amount of rendering I do, because everything is very much just flat color, except for sometimes leaves in the background or a highlight here and some darkness there. So at this point, this is how much I'd be zooming in, regardless whether I was working on a laptop or working on my desktop. Just coming in and adding the next layer. Lucifer's hat and clothes being black. And when I've got that done, just going in and adding a little bit of shadow on the parts of his skin that are turning away from the light. Whites of his eyes. And this is just a tiny bit. Let me bring the brush down a little bit. Just a little bit around the edges of the value of the forms as they're turning away from the light. Not a whole lot. I don't want to get caught up in too much rendering there. And back over here. The only thing that's really dark on this is the horse's saddle. Oh wait, and Raphael's hair. And looking at these on a screen, it probably does not look like there is a massive difference in terms of value. That I'm really not using a huge tonal range. But things print darker than they necessarily appear on screen. I'm sure if you've printed out your work before, you've noticed this. When I was doing the previous issue, I had done something, my values were closer to what one would say, like I mentioned before about trying to render it like a photograph with a full range of values. I printed that issue out just as on a lark. I thought, well, there was one page I was worried looked a little too dark and I wanted to see the difference. And when I printed it out, I saw that it was a massive difference and it printed much darker than I had anticipated. And even though I really wanted to just keep going with the issue and say, well, I'm almost done, I forced myself to do the right thing and print out all of the pages of issue 6 so I could compare all of them in hard copy. And I saw that I basically rendered the entire issue too dark. and I really needed to go back and key up the image, adjust it so that everything was in a lighter key. And it printed much better when I sent it off to the printer. I mean, again, what I print out on my printer at home is not going to be, they're good, you know, obviously the printer is using a much higher quality printer. It's going to look better, but it made me realize that, one, I should do this. Like, for every issue from now on, I'm going to print out a hard copy at home and look at it before I send it off to the printer, because that would have really sucked to send it off, get a few hundred copies of an issue printed, only to get it and see how everything is way too dark. So that's another thing that I will be doing when I finish this issue, is to go back and print everything out and then give it another pass and see what adjustments I need to make. Which hopefully will be none, because the one thing I learned from the last issue is don't go any darker than 50% gray. Let's see here, slightly lighter. Just give that sense of value. Pants a little bit lighter. A little darker. I don't know why, but I feel like I want the inside of his mouth just be a little bit darker and get a little bit more of that sense of just depth and shadow. Not a whole lot, just a smidge. And I am wondering, one of the things I've been doing for a lot of pages is just in the background, when there's large white areas, is to just scribble in some trees back here. I mean, if I really wanted to speed up this entire process, I could find like maybe 5 or 6 or 7 different pictures of forests, convert them to grayscale, then convert them to silhouette, so I just have some natural tree. Like, you know how people have a tree brush and they'll just like brush it in? Actually, that would be another thing. I could just create a tree brush or a leaf brush, or I could just find one or purchase one online and just toss those in there in the background. It would speed up the process. And I don't look at those things as cheating. Some people are just like, no, you have to draw every single thing on there yourself. I think part of the reason why I do it in this more laborious way, actually drawing it in, is because at some point I do intend to get back to traditional painting. And when doing traditional painting, I am not going to be able to have a Photoshop brush. I'm going to have to go in there and brush stuff in for real. So I think doing this kind of process helps keep me thinking in terms of a link between traditional media and digital media, and working on an approach that is training my hand to work in a way that when I go back and I'm doing traditional paintings, I'll still be able to do that, as opposed to having to relearn or remember the things I did when I used to paint in the past. And it looks like we've got a comment in the chat. Let's see here. People are like they're showing up to class late. I see Ion Rocks says, sorry I'm late. Yo, man, it's always good to see you. I'm glad you showed up. You know what? I mean, there's always a replay. So I'm just glad whenever anybody comes and watches the videos. And if you want to leave a comment when you catch it later, you can always leave comments and I'll respond to them. The only reason why I was mentioning earlier that no one is here is because usually there's a bunch of people and I'm kind of peppered with questions as we go. And I was surprised that there was nothing. And I just thought, is this broken? Is it working? So I'm glad you guys are here. Noah Smith is in the chat. Says Noah. He says, looks like I finally managed to catch you live streaming. Can't stay long. Got to go to church. But wanted you to know that I finally got the first volume of Morningstar and loved it. Thank you, Noah. I really appreciate that. It's really glad to hear. I'm glad that the story is interesting. It says, and of course, your work looks amazing as always. I am flattered and humbled. Thank you. I want to learn to do this sort of thing traditionally as well as digitally. Gray tone adds so much to black and white when used carefully. And oh yeah, that horse in the middle panel, in the middle panel's eye, fantastic. Good composition work. Thank you. Ian Rocks said, I missed the alert. That's something that I've been trying to fix. There was no alert, an alarm for this broadcast, because normally the alarms happen when I schedule it in advance. And I think I mentioned at the top of the stream that I've been having problems with streaming from my computer while also having the streaming from my computer while also scheduling the events, because it looks like the main way to schedule events is using Google Hangouts, and when I use Google Hangouts, the encoder that Google Hangouts use doesn't seem to give me the same level of visual quality that I get when I'm just streaming using OBS. So, but you know what? Maybe that's something I need to play with. Maybe I need to try streaming. I mentioned this last week that I was going to do a bunch of practice streams just to get stuff out, and I did not. I think that maybe I will try it when I'm done later today and see if I have time to do it again. But I also have other stuff to do, like, working out, getting a little exercise before, after I finish my stream. So it may be the same thing as last week, where I'll say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to try a couple of test streams," and then I end up not doing it. But the point is you didn't. That's the reason why you didn't get an alert. I'm pretty sure the reason why you didn't get an alert is because I didn't pre-schedule this. Usually I'll schedule it the night before. I've been telling myself I'm going to start scheduling it the week before, like right after I do the last one, because it is generally 11 a.m. every week. But sometimes I don't have a topic in mind, or I'm not sure what I'm going to be drawing or doing. And I'm not sure, again, whether the scheduling will work with the actual, because when I schedule it, it actually puts out an actual URL on YouTube, and I don't know if that's the same if I just start broadcasting versus whether it's, I know what it'll show up as if I do it with the Google Hangout. I just need to test if the Google Hangout will give me the visual quality that I want. Oh, and there was something that I was going to mention in terms of Noah's comment about adding gray tones to black and white. Part of one of the reasons why I'm doing my book in black and white is because, well, there's two things. First off, there is the actual time. The time it takes to color a particular comic page. Now, mind you, professional colorists can work very, very quickly, but they're very experienced. They have flatters working with them, for them, helping them, and they're able to crank out a tremendous amount of work in a very short time. I'm sure they don't prefer to do it in a very short time, but they're professionals who that's what they focus on. It's not all they do. Many colorists are great writers and illustrators in their own right, but being that I don't spend a lot of time doing color work, it takes me longer and I spend more time thinking through the process. I don't have the budget at this time to hire on a colorist. And I definitely feel like if I were working with someone else, I would want them to be fairly compensated for their work. So one is just the economics of the time that it takes to do a color book versus a black and white book. It would just take me longer thought-wise. And then there's also the fact that self-publishing, the cost of printing a color book is significantly higher than publishing a black and white book. Now that isn't true if you're, say, if you're printing thousands of issues at a time. If you're a Marvel or DC or an Image book, then yeah, you're probably going to, be able to cover that budget. Well, for Image it depends, because Image really it's self-publishing. It's just using the Image banner, but it's still, the creator owning all of the rights. But my point being is that on a financial scale, it also makes sense to, if I'm self-publishing, I can make my books at an affordable cost if I'm making them black and white, and I probably wouldn't be able to afford that doing it in color. So there's both how much color would increase my actual production time, and then how much it would increase the cost of the books to a point that's higher than I think people would pay for an indie comic, even if it's something they thought was really cool. Oh, funny, I'm talking about that because Noah also asked, do you think you'll ever go back and maybe coloring some pages of your earlier volumes? And in my mind, I'm already thinking what the answer is yes, but I wouldn't be coloring it myself. My thought is simply, I look at it kind of like the example that I think of is Jeff Smith, the creator of Bone. And when his book was picked up by Scholastic, that they went back and he collaborated with colorist Steve Hamaker to color all of his pieces. To color the entire run. Like, they just went back and published it in small volumes until the whole series was colored. And if my books, it would really be contingent on, say, doing a hardcover collection, of there being a big enough audience that people wanted a reprint. Like, that would be something that I would probably do a Kickstarter for, is to do a color edition of a book, and the funds would go really towards paying the colorist and whatever the printing costs were for doing a color version. Because I'm fine with it being black and white. I tend to like stuff like Sin City, and if you've ever looked at Guy Davis's series, The Marquise, or The Marquis, I guess it's The Marquise. It's Marquis, like Marquis de Sade. That's a great black and white book that creator owned, was put out by Dark Horse. I love that look, so I don't feel like I'm missing anything, or like I never achieved my true vision by doing a book in black and white. For me, this is my original vision. But that said, I would be very happy to see what a color artist would bring to it. But I would want to hire a colorist to do it as opposed to doing it myself. I don't feel a massive desire to go back and, like, I probably would want to go back and paint new covers for the series, and that I'd probably do all myself. But beyond that, I would be more than happy to have a colorist come in and do color versions towards the end of the series. I'm doing something a little bit funky here on this panel. I intentionally wanted this horse to have sort of the look that the demons have, because it's doing Lucifer's bidding. It's just the fact that he's commanding it now to end Raphael's life. And I wanted for this to show, like, there's no sound effects in that you can see here, but in the lettered version, there's the snap sound of Lucifer snapping his fingers. It was just funny because I had done all this before Infinity War had come out. I had planned all this, and now it definitely feels like that whole, like, Infinity War Thanos snap, where he snaps his fingers and the horse rears back, and that's it for Raphael. But, I can't remember at the time that I was drawing this why I didn't just do the entire horse in silhouette. I think I had thumbnailed it out to have the horse be completely silhouette, but for some reason I did not like that look, and decided instead to go in and paint, leave him as such where I knew I was going to do him in dark values, but leave it light enough that you could still, see his flesh tones, see some more detail than you would if it was just purely a silhouette with eyes and teeth. Oh, I see the questions are coming fast and furious. You guys are making up for lost time. So let me take a second and read through some of these comments. So let me just save and take a look. Oh, Noah said that's a great idea. I didn't know about bone. I think black and white looks great with your work, especially it would be fun to see it colored. Any ideas of specific colorists? No, I don't have any colorists in mind. I know that there are a lot of great colorists. I mean, there's different. Every time I see a different colorist, I'm like, they all bring a flavor to books. But they're each. It's not like necessarily like one's better than the other. It's just like a different flavor. It's like listening to different bands covering the same song, and they may all do it in a different, cool way. I like some of Marissa Louise's work. I've seen her on a lot of different Image comics. I like Elizabeth Breitweiser. Her colors look great. Dave Stewart is definitely one that I look at for. Sometimes I look at when I'm planning to do some of my paintings on my own. Bill Crabtree, who has sent me some nice comments on some of my videos on YouTube, I loved all of his work on Invincible. He's a phenomenal colorist, and he's actually working on a book with the guys who created The Sixth Gun. And I hadn't heard of this book before, but I think it's called The Damned. And I saw that he was the colorist on this. I'm like, dude, I will pick it up just for his work. So I think it's coming out from Oni Press, and I'm not sure how far the series is so far because I just happened to see it online, and I've got a backlog of stuff I want to read through. But Bill Crabtree is another guy. These are all people that I think that if I'm doing a Kickstarter for it, I don't know necessarily if I could even afford them. Speaking of professional artists who I probably couldn't afford, but whose work I really love, there's a guy who does a lot of work for DC Comics, John Ursick. He's a friend. I've met him through the our Coffee and Comics Facebook group, and we get together and have hangouts. And he's a great guy. He's taught me tricks about coloring. He's another guy whose work looks fantastic, and I love. I think that I try to look at, if you were to ask me, like you did ask me, what colors would I want? I think that I would almost want to say, if I like this colorist's work, I would want to just say, are you interested in this, and do you have an interesting take? And then once they have an interesting take, just get the hell out of their way. Because they know what they're doing. They have a better sense of color than I do. And it's almost like a director casting a film. They say that's 90% of directing is casting. And I would just simply say, if there was a colorist whose work I liked, then I would just want to just get out of their way and let them do what they do. If I know that I like the work that they do, then just trust their color choices. That doesn't mean that I would not have opinions about things. I would presume that they would want to do a few pages and say, hey, does this work for what you were thinking? And I would say, well, I was thinking maybe this versus that. But more often than not, what I really would imagine is me just saying, it looks great, keep going. I know that when I'm getting feedback, if someone just doesn't have anything to say, I'm like, okay, but I still want to hear something. So I think what I would probably want to do is specifically, as opposed to just saying, oh, it looks great, keep going, and then they're worried that they're going to get way into the job, and then I'm going to have a bunch of comments, what I would probably do is say, call out what are the things that I like. So if everything looks fantastic and I'm happy with it, my goal would be like, oh, I really like what you're doing with the leaves on this character, the way that you're treating the clothing on this, or the way you're doing the wings in this area. Like I would specifically say, I think it looks great. These are the things I like. Do more of that. So, and again, if there was something that I really didn't think was working, then I would comment on it and give what I think would hopefully be helpful suggestions. But again, try to let them be the ones to come up with the solutions that they feel work best. So, I mean, these are all just things I've gotten from, in terms of my day job, how when I'm doing design projects and I'm getting feedback from other people, the way that I want them to express the things that they like and don't like. Let me go back to the chat here. Let's see. Sorry if this is a bit off topic. For your panel work, how often do you look up reference, and how often does it pop all out of your head? How often does it just pop all out of your head? Well, in this issue, another thing that took a very, very long time was that I was using far more reference than I've done in the past. And that was a conscious choice. It was part of my learning to grow and draw better. And it doesn't mean that now that I did it with this issue, I'm going to stop using reference. That's one of those things that I feel the more I do, the faster I'm going to get at it. And I went back and forth between using reference for every single thing and for every single panel in a book versus only using reference when I was drawing something and I was having trouble with it. Because that's a clear sign for me. If I'm drawing something and I'm like, oh, I need to draw and erase and draw and erase, I'm like, the reason why I'm doing poorly at this is because I don't know what this thing looks like and I need to pull some reference. But what I tried initially for this particular issue was I sat down with my thumbnails, and once I was going to the layout stage for every page, I would sit down and take a bunch of photos. And I would either take photos of my hand if there were particular hand positions. I had little figures that I would use. And in fact, if you do a search for reference on my page, on my YouTube channel, if you go to the search bar on the home page of my channel, if you search for reference, you'll see a couple of videos on photo reference talking about Norman Rockwell and his process. But there is at least one video of me where I actually show you the little figures that I'm using. I forget what they're called. The little gray mannequins. If you're online and you're an artist, you've seen figures for them. They're not the wooden mannequins, but they're the little gray action figures that have that are highly posable. SH Art Figs, I think, or SHA Figs. I can't remember the exact name of them, but those guys, I've got a male and a female, and then I realized, oh, well, if I'm doing a comic, there's going to be people fighting. I should probably have 2 males and 2 females. So I got a couple. The second ones I got were knockoffs, and they were not as good of quality. So I would but the reason why I got the knockoffs is because the figures, which already are kind of high priced for their size at like $20 to $30, for some reason they were way out of print. Like I guess everyone had fallen in love with them at the same time I did. So when I went back to buy more, they were now going online for like $80. And I'm like, I'm not paying $80 for a little ass action figure. So when I saw a few months later that there were knockoffs being sold that were closer into the $20 range again, I thought, well, let me get a couple of these. And one of them was, oh, you could see the difference in quality. They were visually not as well made. They weren't horrible, but they were not as good. And so, and one of them just had it had a 2 left arms, so they just gave 2 of the same arm on the opposite one. So also the arm on the right hand side bent backwards, the elbow bent in the wrong direction. So it was just poorly made. And I had ordered it through Wish, and I had emailed them saying that the item was defective. And I asked them, and I told them I don't want a refund. I just want one that's correct. And the Wish customer service got back to me and said, look, these are just small companies in Hong Kong that are sending stuff out. Fact of the matter is that if this is defective and we ordered you another one, it's probably just going to be defective as well. We're just giving you a refund, which I will tell you that is a plus. I will give kudos to Wish for their customer service because they were very straightforward. And even though I didn't get the thing that I wanted, they explained why and just said, yeah, sorry, here's your money back. Please order something else from us. We apologize for the poor quality of the item. So they, good customer service, even though the second one of those figures I ordered was not great. But I've seen that they are coming back like into production now, and I've not looked lately to see how much the figures are, but I think they're probably much more reasonable, back down into the $30 range. So we're a little over an hour here. I'm going to run through here and see if there's any other questions, and then I think I'm probably going to wrap this up. I'll just, you know what, I'll finish off this panel over here and we'll call it a day. Oh yeah, Noah says, major spoilers, of course. I love how the page you have here looks with that snap. I definitely get the vibe of inevitability. It makes total sense about about the color, giving carte blanche, more freedoms. The better you'll probably get, so long as they don't go totally off the wall. Yeah, that's I look at it as a balance. Normally, the reason why I tend one of the reasons why I tend to write and draw and color and do the entire inking, doing the entire process by myself is because I'm a little bit of a control freak. And I wouldn't want a collaboration to be a miserable process for my collaborators. I think that I would really want to make a collaboration be the best possible experience for everyone involved. And that's not to say that I will never collaborate with any other creators. It's not to say I will never draw something someone else wrote. That's not to say I will never write comics for other people. I have written comics for other people and probably will again in the future. But I think that just from working with other people professionally in my day job, learning how to it's a fine line between letting someone know what you expect from them and micromanaging them. And I think that if you can give someone clear expectations and then ask them, is this what you want? I think if you do all of the discussion about the collaboration up front, and that's one of the things that, again, if I were working with a colorist, I would do, is simply, it's not just a one-way street of this is what I want. It's for me saying, so this is what I want. How do you feel about that? And then having a short, it doesn't have to be like we have meetings and all this crap. It's just a short conversation and just saying, do you have feedback? Do you need to go away and think about the thoughts that I gave you and then come back and just say, hey, I was thinking about this instead of that? I think you can get if you get a lot of that open communication out of the way up front, then you really can. It's not simply giving someone carte blanche. It's about letting them know what the parameters are for what you're looking for, and then them saying, you know what, I agree with these parameters, or I disagree, let's change them a little bit. And then once you're on the same page, just letting them do their job. I think that that's true in pretty much any business. Not that I've run other businesses, but in just observing people that I've worked for and worked with, that, giving somebody both direction and ownership of a project is probably, like you said, it's the best way to get the best results. Because if you just tell someone, go do whatever you want, I mean, I know you may feel this, other creators may feel this, when you're given complete freedom, sometimes you're paralyzed because you don't know what you want. You're just like, oh, I can do anything. I don't know what to do. If you feel that way about your own project, you can imagine giving complete freedom to someone who didn't create the project, saying, you can do whatever you want on this thing that I made. I think that a lot of creators would want to deliver the best possible work possible, the best possible job. I think that, when you take on work for someone, work for hire, it's a sense of pride for you. You want the person that hired you to be proud of the work that you did. You want to be proud of the work you did. So you're going to want to give your best work. And I think that if you don't feel like they're giving you enough feedback, you're like, well, how do I know if I'm hitting the target? So it's that thing of making sure that you let them know what that target is. And then they can say, all right, based on what you're looking for, I have an entire set of skills and ways to approach this. And I'm going to come in there and I'm going to blow your doors off with something that looks awesome. But because I'm a professional, I know what I'm doing, I'm going to do it in an efficient and timely manner. And that's not to say that there wouldn't be back and forth during the course of the creative process, because there's all kinds of things that happen that are unexpected. There's things that may mess up a deadline. There may be, for instance, I've seen stuff on indie books where an artist or a colorist is working on one thing, but they're not making as much as they would like to from a project, and they're like, hey, I have to put this project aside because I have to go and make more money. Doesn't mean I'm abandoning you, or it doesn't mean I'm bailing on you, but I have to go and do this other work. And if you're not able to pay someone Marvel or DC rates, which for colorists aren't as high as they should be, in terms of like really paying some, well, like, you know what? It's hard for me to say that because I'm not at Marvel or DC. I don't know what it's like in their editorial offices and what the margins are on the actual comics they're making. But I do feel like colorists bring a lot to the table these days. In the days of digital coloring, they bring so much to the work that But my point being is that things can get in the way of the creative process, and being able to talk with your collaborators about those things and have conversations and saying, all right, if this contingency happens, this is what we're going to do, or this is how we're going to approach it, or okay, you're going to need to step away from this project for 2 months. Do I bring someone else in to help out? Is it going to destroy our production schedule if we slow down and wait for you? And that's for anybody in the creative team, writer, inker, penciler. You would like to think that you're going to schedule the entire project in such a way that no person on the team is going to get screwed. Although I feel like colorists and letterers are the ones who get screwed the most because they're usually the last ones to touch the art. So if anyone else, if the writer falls behind schedule, it slows down the penciler. If the penciler slows down schedule, it falls behind schedule, it slows down the inker. If the inker falls behind schedule, that slows down the colorist and the letterer, that sort of thing. So I mean, it is a challenge. And again, this is one of the reasons why the more I do this, the more I realize I'm not necessarily in a hurry to leave my day job, only because it gives me the fact that I'm not making my main income from comics gives me the freedom to just take my time with what I'm working on and make it come out the way I want to see it. And true, there's definitely times when I'm still rushing and working faster than honestly, I'm working faster mainly just to see what it's like if I'm pushing myself in the creative process. To see what it's like if I'm working at a speed closer to quarterly, if I'm working at a speed, I mean, definitely not close to monthly pace, but working faster just to see what happens when I put the pedal to the metal, Because if I can produce work of the same quality while working, twice as fast, then that means I can put more work out. I can get work in front of people sooner. I can, build my audience faster. And then maybe there is a point where I'm doing comics full time. And, maybe I'm working with a colorist or someone doing gray tones. And I'm really just focusing on the writing, penciling, and inking. Okay. And Noah said, thank you for the detailed response. I got to knock off a figure drawing. It's like you said before, the only way to get better is to keep drawing and digesting. I'm glad you spent time, did some drawing with me. Thanks so much. Okay, you have a great day. He said, I need to find someone to read over a short script for a one-shot I want to do. That's cool. It's always good to get feedback. So, let me hit save here. Got a little bit done. Most of this page. Still have a little bit more to finish on that last panel. Cleaning this up. It's still a little bit raggedy. But, yeah. So this page is almost done. Put a dent in it. Again, if you'd like to get a bonus video once a month, that'll be on patreon.com. You can also, supporting this channel, getting additional posts. I'm setting it up now so that you're going to get my blog posts a month in advance. So there's a whole lot of my figure drawings, works in progress, my thoughts in the creative process. You'll be able to see all of that on Patreon as a reward for subscribers. And again, checking out my comics. If you haven't seen any of my work before, you can get previews of all my comics at comics.jeremy.net. And if you would like to buy some of my comics, like Noah supporting the channel through just buying my books and reading it, go to amazon.jeremy.net. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Go be creative.